Good afternoon and welcome back to the last of these 7 Bible studies about various topics. Please let me know if there are any other subjects that you'd like me to cover in further talks in the new year. This study is about angels and why I believe in them and how I believe in them. It also looks at biblical passages where we might find out more about them. This talk was originally given at a meditation group I founded back in 1979, which continued to meet until well into the 21st century. They asked me back specially to talk about angels, and what I am giving you today is part of that talk. When they asked me to talk about angels, I wondered whether they knew what they were getting themselves into. It's not all of us that have personal experience of angels, although I think it is not as uncommon as many might believe. For instance, and forgive me for this personal reference, during the Munich crisis, which preceded the lowest part of the West's appeasement of Adolf Hitler, the UK government turned all the street lights off. My father was riding his bike home to his lodgings near Guildford Station along the riverbank from his office at the other end of the town. In the dark he missed the path and ended up with his bike in the fast-flowing water just near where the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre is now. In that dark and deep water he must have feared for his life, and he always swore afterwards that the strong arms of the person who dived in after him were the arms of an angel. Well, whether it was a human angel or an angelic angel, because of that selfless act of a stranger, he survived, and eventually, after he had successfully done his part in conquering North Africa, the Middle East and Italy, and occupied a bit of Germany in company with a few others, he married my mum, and I was born, all thanks to an angel. We shouldn't take angels lightly. When people speak about the ministry of angels, they are really talking about the grace of God, which is very real indeed. And for humans, God's love would be too intense to be seen directly. So we need to see it through sunglasses, as it were. And that's where the sacraments come in, and also where angels and archangels come in. In the communion service, when we come right to the central mystery, which is us being united with God in the body and blood of Christ, we align ourselves with the angels and archangels, and we sing with them their unending hymn of praise. We can't take the grace of God neat because it is too strong. But in dilute form, it appears to us as the ministry of angels and archangels in a friendly and helpful form to us. The kind of language we use to talk about God comes down to us from Jewish literature. Starting from the time of the exile in Babylon, and coming right down to the time immediately before Jesus was born, when God appeared to Moses. It says first that it's an angel, but it turns out to be God. He appears like a burning bush here in Exodus 3, 2-6. There the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burnt up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." He said further, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Very often, angels appear as God's agents, and what they represent is God himself, as we saw at the burning bush. Now, when God appears to Elijah, who is fleeing for his life from murderous Jezebel, he hides in a cave at Horeb. The appearance is like a storm followed by a still small voice. Here it is in 1 Kings 19, 11-13. Yahweh said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for Yahweh is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before Yahweh. But Yahweh was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but Yahweh was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but Yahweh was not in the fire. And after the fire a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" It was at that point that the vision gave Elijah his courage back and his marching orders to go and get the disastrous political situation sorted out. Earlier in their history, the Lord had appeared to the children of Israel like a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. This is back in Exodus 13. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer, for God thought, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt, prepared for battle. And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, "God will surely take notice of you, and then you must carry my bones with you from there." They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. Yahweh went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so that they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Now, more traditional angels appear to the likes of Jacob, whose dream of a ladder up to the sky, populated by angelic traffic going up and down it, is known to most of us. There is another encounter with an angel in Genesis 32, 24-31. This time the angel is referred to as an anonymous man. Genesis 32, 24-31. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on his hip joint, and Jacob's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, now that the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have won." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why do you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. When Jacob wrestles with an angel, it turns out that he has in fact been wrestling with God. the most human encounter is that of the three mysterious strangers with Abraham and Sarah. Here they are in Genesis 18, 1-15. Yahweh appeared to Abraham by the sacred grove of oaks of Mamre, as he sat there in front of his tent in the heat of the day. When he looked up and saw three men standing by, he ran from the tent to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "Gentlemen, if I, your servant, find favour with you, do not pass by. Let's bring some water to wash your feet. Come and rest under the tree. I'll bring some food, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that go as you wish, since you have come to me, your servants." So they said, "Yes, we accept." So Abraham rushed into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, take 3 measures of best flour, knead it and bake bread." Abraham then ran to the herd and chose a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant, who quickly got it ready. Then he took cream and milk and the calf that he had prepared and served it to them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" He said, "There in the tent." Then one said, "I will come back to you in 9 months, and your wife Sarah will have a son." And Sarah was listening inside the tent just behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were very old. She had passed her menopause. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "At my age, with my elderly husband, shall we start having sex again?" Yahweh said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I really have a baby now that I'm old?' Is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? I will return to you at the time I said, and Sarah will have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh," because she was embarrassed. Yahweh said, "Oh yes, you did laugh." That the angels formed an army for God, however, has not been forgotten. The angel of the Lord's presence was with the warriors of Israel of old, and the heavenly host, the army of God's angels, has fought alongside his people against their oppressors. The military leaders liked to think the heavenly host was on their side, but in fact the angels were actually on God's side and fighting for God's purposes. And that's an important distinction. As time went on, of course, the angels as an army became less important to people, though their presence on the battlefield has persisted in legend. As late as the 2 world wars, with the Angel of Mons, Dunkirk, and the Battle of Britain and D-Day, there are 3 examples on the screen now. But on the whole, the more personal ministry of the angels, as seen by Abraham and Sarah, was understood as their more important role. That's why there are angels attendant at the announcement of John the Baptist's conception and the conception and birth of Jesus, because it is the opening of the great story of the greatest revelation of God's goodness. The presence of angels in the story reveals that these are not ordinary conceptions or ordinary births, but that God is at work here, doing good and showing love to those about to be saved. Here from St. Luke's Gospel is Zechariah, John the Baptist's father-to-be, embarrassingly being visited at work by an angel from God, with some awkward news for him. Zechariah is a priest on the rota to offer incense in the temple one evening. Outside the doors of the sanctuary, the congregation are at prayer, and inside, behind closed doors, Zechariah is about to light the incense. Luke 1:11-20. Then there appeared to him an angel of the Lord, standing at the right side of the incense altar. When Zechariah saw him, he was terrified, and fear overwhelmed him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will name him John. You will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He must never drink wine or strong drink. Even before his birth, he will be filled with the Holy Spirit. He will turn many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God. With the spirit and power of Elijah, he will go before him to turn the hearts of parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Zechariah said to the angel, "How will I know this is so? For I am an old man and my wife is getting on in years." The angel replied, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. But now, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time, you will become mute, unable to speak, until the day these things occur." And to follow that, here is the famous scene when the angel of the Lord spoke to the Virgin Mary. In neither Zechariah's case nor in Mary's are we able to say what we would have seen had we been eyewitnesses. Would the messenger have been visible to us, or only visible to the person being visited? We can't possibly say. Here is Luke's account of the Annunciation to Mary in Luke chapter 1, verses 28 to 38. "And the angel Gabriel came to Mary and said, 'I greet you, O favoured one, the Lord is with you.' But she was deeply troubled by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, 'Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favour with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give to him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end.' Mary said to the angel, 'How can this be, since I haven't slept with a man?' The angel said to her, 'The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore the child to be born will be holy. He will be called Son of God. And now your relative Elizabeth in her old age has also conceived a son, and this is the 6th month for her who was said to be barren. For nothing will be impossible with God.' Then Mary said, 'Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word.' Then the angel departed from her." Well, these are the familiar and friendly angels. In the Jewish faith and in the church, we personified the love and intervention of God in this way. We have no real way of proving whether what people saw was objective or subjective, or whether angels are really a way for humans to cope with seeing the work of God at work. We organized angels into a hierarchy so we could see more clearly the different kinds of work the angels and archangels do. So who are these angels and archangels? Well, first of all, there's the heavenly host, which is God's army, or sometimes God's heavenly choir. These are to be a sign of God's power at work in the world, a sign of the joy and praise he receives from his people for doing that work. The imagery for the heavenly host comes from the night sky and the clouds in the daytime, and remind us that we must transcend this world and its troubles. Next come the angels proper. Now, these are called malachi in Hebrew or angeloi in Greek, both having the same meaning. It's the messenger, the postman. They bring messages to us from God and carry our prayers to God. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said that every child has a guardian angel who prays even when all other prayer is absent. One of the earliest instances of angels as intermediaries occurred in a dream that the patriarch Jacob had when the Hebrews were still nomadic. Here it is. You can find it in Genesis 28, verses 10 to 15. Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamt that there was a ladder set up on the earth, the top of it reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And Yahweh stood beside him and said, I am Yahweh, the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring, and your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Now, remember what I said earlier about the angels. Every time we hear talk about angels, remember that it is God himself at work. In the old prayer book, the prayer for the church and the world ends with these words, Grant this, O Father, for Jesus Christ's sake, our only mediator and advocate. We don't, strictly speaking, need the angels because we have Jesus. The angels are a sign or a personification of the work of Jesus being done. They are, in fact, Jesus doing his work, interceding for us and bringing us salvation from God. And finally, there are the archangels. There are only 3 referred to in the Bible. These 3 in this Victorian picture: Michael, Gabriel, and in the middle there, Raphael. The first 2 appear in the Old and New Testaments, and Raphael can be found in the Apocrypha. The Jews first gave names to archangels during their exile in Babylon. It is only in books written after that time that we find, say in the book of Daniel, an archangel called Michael. In Daniel chapter 10, he appears as an army commander and a campaigner for Israel, and is referred to as your prince. He appears later, of course, as a Christ-like figure in the book of Revelation, as the captain of God's army in the fight with the devil. Once again, you see an angel referred to when the actual work has been done by God. Therefore, when we see Michael defeating Satan, we should know that this has in fact been done by Christ, who is our captain and the winner of the last battle. All angels are a chip off the old primeval block of the divine. They are representations of God himself at work. This is also true of Gabriel. Gabriel also first appears in the book of Daniel. In chapter 8 of Daniel, Gabriel is called upon as an interpreter, whose job is to clarify the meaning of a vision Daniel had. He tells Daniel not to be afraid of what he has seen. Later, of course, Gabriel also tells the Virgin Mary not to be afraid when she learns that her pregnancy is from God. God at work, once again, explaining, calming, taking away our fear, and helping us to appreciate things beyond our understanding. And finally, Raphael, who appears in the book of Tobit in the Apocrypha. He is a healer who brings sight to blind Tobit, who reveals himself at the end to have been one of 7 archangels who come out and go in to the presence of God. Once again, the gift of healing of body and soul is one that properly belongs to God, and the angel is, of course, a sign, once again, of God at work. So, how will believing in angels help us in our lives? God is, of course, the still small voice that we long to hear in our quiet moments. after the storm and the clamour of our daily lives. God is in the still small voice. But we must never forget that he is there in the noise and the bustle as well. But many of us feel uneasy about being that close to God, and that's where the angels can come in useful. In a well-known hymn we sing, "Angels, help us to adore him. You behold him face to face." I'm now going to quote, as I come to the end of this talk, some words written by Viktor Frankl about his experience in Auschwitz concentration camp. It is rare to find such deep thought, and maybe it is only in such extremes that such truths are available to us. These words will bring an end to this series of Bible studies, which I hope will have helped some of you along the way to appreciating Scripture and its place alongside the church fellowship and preaching in shaping and forming our faith. I hope that this final study in the weeks before Christmas will enable you to enjoy in the company of angels who also contemplate God, far removed from our defective vision, but close to us to help and to heal. Advent is a time for stirring up a love for God in our hearts. Our earthly loves are a good guide to us about how to do that. In Auschwitz, that dreadful place, Viktor Frankl, bereft of everything, was picturing his wife and remembering her love for him. And this is what he wrote. "A thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, the truth that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which one can aspire. Then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. Human salvation is through love and in love. I understood how one who has nothing left in this world still may know bliss, but if only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of his beloved. In a position of utter desolation, when no one can express themselves in positive action, when one's only achievement may consist in enduring one's sufferings in the right way, an honourable way, in such a position one can, through loving contemplation of the image one carries of one's beloved, achieve fulfilment. For the first time in my life, I was able to understand the meaning of the words, 'The angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of an infinite glory.' The angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of an infinite glory. So, to conclude, we bless ourselves and one another with the words, "May God protect us, may he guide us, may he give us strength and right understanding, may love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace."